The name of God is I am. That I am. Now, every time you use the name I am, you are using the name of God. How do you use this name? In the book of Joel, there's a line that says, "Let the weak man say, I am strong." Now, one of the things that I want to leave you with here in the time that I have with you today is for you to become conscious of how you use this term, I am. So what I encourage you to do in terms of manifesting is to take out a piece of paper sometime when you're at home, and it sounds like a silly thing to do, but I want you to do it. I want you to write at the top of that page the word that. T-H-A-T, that. Okay? And under that heading, whatever it is that you would like to attract or manifest into your life, I would like you to just write that down. All right? So if it's a job that you want, if it's a relationship that you want, if it's a healing that you want, if it's abundance that you want to attract into your life, whatever it is, just place it underneath that. And come to a place in your life where it is spoken about in the book of Romans, in the New Testament. He calls those things which do not exist as though they did. You must be able to get to this place in your life where you don't use the evidence of your senses, what your eyes tell you, what your ears tell you, what your stomach tells you, what you see written down, what the internet tells you. You want to be able to be in a place where you are living from the end as if what you would like to manifest is already there. To make a future dream, a present fact, you must assume the feeling of that wish as already being fulfilled. Your subconscious mind is listening to how you are asking the universe to provide for you what it is that you would like to attract or manifest into your life. And if you fill your subconscious mind with all of the things that you don't want, that you don't like, that make you unhappy, that make you depressed, that make you worry, then your subconscious mind, which is impersonal, and remember, it can't make a distinction between what it is that you are feeling as a result of what you place into your mind or what is actually happening in your life. It doesn't distinguish one from the other. It's totally impersonal. It's just open to suggestion. And here you are suggesting to your subconscious mind, which will, when you awaken, you will align with the universal subconscious mind, the one mind. You know, there's millions of people out there in the world. There's millions of you watching this program. And you can see the difference between each and every one of you on the basis of your appearances. But there's only one mind. That's what the great spiritual texts all teach us. So now, if you program your subconscious mind to tell yourself, to go over all the things you don't want, all the things you don't like, all the things that shouldn't have happened, all the ways that you were mistreated, all about how terrible the economy is. And, you know, we live in a fear-based world. You want to shift away from that kind of consciousness and use the last 5 minutes of your day to program your subconscious mind with what you have placed into your imagination with your I ams. I am well. I say it to myself every night, especially when I get into that state, you know, that weird state where you're sort of half awake and you're half asleep and you know you're heading towards that sort of subconscious place. And I just remember what it says in the book of Job. I don't want my instructions sealed by going over, I am sick, I am poor, I am unhappy. I just say, I am content. I am lucky. When I wake up in the morning, I don't say, oh, good God, morning. It's the reverse. I say, good morning, God. You know, it's like being grateful rather than being in that place where the things that you don't want are what you have programmed your
life to be. I always think of this as, like you have a currency. And if I were to give you currency to go out and purchase what you want, and every place you went, you took this currency that you have to purchase what you want, and you purchase what you don't want, and then when you get home and you wonder why your house and your life is filled with everything that you don't want, it's because you're insane. That's just insanity. It is. I mean, why would you take the currency that you have to buy what you do, that's there for what you do want, and spend it on what you don't want? Well, the currency that you have for attracting into your life what you would like to have are your thoughts and your imagination and your I ams, your God consciousness. Why would you use it to say, I am unable, I am unlucky, I cannot, I will not? You're throttling, that's what it says in the I am discourses, you're throttling that great I am presence that is located within you. And so, the last 5 minutes of your day, as you're about to marinate for 8 hours in your subconscious mind with your unconscious state, you want to go into that state. Even if your senses tell you, oh, you're just fooling yourself and so on. You don't want to use your senses and the internet and other people's opinions, what you see, what you hear. You want to let go of all of that and recognize that anything that you want to attract or create for yourself in your life begins with what you have placed in your imagination and have assumed the feeling of that wish fulfilled, and now you're going to practice it. Because getting stuff out of your subconscious mind is a big job. It really is. Most people are just not willing to do what it takes. I still can't get the Morse code out of my subconscious mind. I need to have a major deprogramming thing. There's that exit sign. Dit-da-da-da-da, dit-da. It's always there. But that's just harmless. What isn't harmless is, placing into your subconscious mind all the things that you're reviewing about what you don't like, about what didn't happen, about who mistreated you, about how sad you are, about how this can't happen. You are a creator.
And this is one of the most difficult things for people to grasp and understand. That if you become what you think about all day long, and what you think about all day long is what you don't want, or what you don't like, you will act upon what you don't want, because you can only act upon your thoughts. And what you don't want will continue to show up and manifest into your life. You cannot manifest thin from I hate being fat. Because if you hate being fat, your attention, your energy is on hating being fat. And you will then create more hating being fat into your life. You cannot manifest abundance from I despise being poor. Because the despising of being poor is your thought, you will attract more despising of being poor into your life. You'll have to act upon what you think about. And it gets worse. You cannot attract or manifest into your life what you want if your thoughts are on what always has been. And that's the wake. And that's your personal history. If you don't have a story, you don't have to live up to it. And if your thoughts are on what always has been, and you use this as a reason why you can't attract into your life what you want, because after all, it's always been this way, then even if you are really angry at the way it's always been, and your thoughts are on how angry you are at the way it always has been, what it always has been will continue to show up in your life because you become what you think about all day long. So you don't look and put your attention on what always has been, you give that up. And again, you shift not just to what you want, because if your thoughts stay on just on what you want, then you'll create and manifest more of wanting. What you want to do is put your attention on what you intend to create with passion, as long as it's motivated out of love and kindness and all of the things that will produce strength, which is between 20,000 and 100,000 cycles per second. Love, kindness, forgiveness, the things I'm going to summarize with. when you're really ready and you say, God, I am willing to turn it over to you. I'm willing to accept any guidance, any help that you are willing to send me. I now start becoming open to the teachers who are going to show up in my life. And they'll show up in the form of a little child. I had a woman tell me one day that her 10-year-old daughter came home with a girlfriend. And the little girlfriend said to her daughter, I didn't know your mommy was fat. And she said, that was my teacher. I'd been thinking about how tired I was of being overweight for all of these years and carrying around this extra, and all of the, I'd just been tired of the baggage. And this little child who just came into my house for the first time said it. She said, I went out, I lost the weight, I knew what I had to do. And it was gone. She said, I've never put it back on since.
Is rewrite your agreement with reality. Like you rewrite it. Because you've been programmed yourself to have an agreement that says who you are is what your tribe has dictated or what other people have told you or your limitations or what can and can't be done. I go out in the backyard and tell my kids I'm going to make it rain. This whole idea of just getting quiet, going to that place within yourself and rewriting it. I have a wonderful little summary of how we change our life. Some of you have heard this, I'm sure. It's called, it's written by Portia Nelson. And she wrote a book about this, about the sidewalk, the hole in the sidewalk. And she said she was given a 5x7 card at the end of a seminar, such as this. And she was asked to write down the 5 chapters of her life on a 5x7 card so she don't get too wordy, all right? And she said, here are the 5 chapters of my life. And this is really a wonderful summary of it. She said, I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I am lost. I am helpless. It isn't my fault. And it takes me forever to find a way out. Chapter 2 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. But it isn't my fault. And it still takes me a long time to get out. Chapter 3. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It is my fault. And I get out immediately. Chapter 4 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5. I walk down another street. Isn't that great? And I think walking down another street is what we're talking about, not just individually, but collectively and as a people.
If there is intelligence behind life, and there is every reason to believe that there is, or that there may be, and think about that for a moment. If there is intelligence behind life, and all of science points to the fact that there is some kind of an intelligence behind life, behind this body that you were hearing about in the last hour, that there's something mystical, if you will. And I brought with me just a quote from the man who won the Nobel Prize for Physics. He was Einstein's greatest teacher. He was considered the father of modern quantum physics. His name was Max Planck. And on receiving the Nobel Prize for Physics, this is what he said. He said, as a man who has devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of matter, I can tell you, as the result of all of my research about atoms, this much, that there is no matter as such. That all matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particles of an atom to vibration. and holds this minute solar system of the atom together. We must, as scientists, all assume that behind this force is the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. This divine intelligence that is behind everything that is working in this body that we are so consumed with and so concerned about, and how to keep it healthy, that there is something beyond that. One of my favorite poets once observed, he said, what if you slept? And what if in your sleep you dreamed? And what if in your dream you went to heaven and there picked a strange and wonderful flower? And what if when you awoke, you held that flower in your hand? Ah, what then? Samuel Taylor Coleridge, who wrote The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, and I wonder when I ask that question, I've done it on a couple of my public television specials, to ask that question, do you really believe that such a thing is possible? Because as I wrote out last night, I said if there is intelligence behind life, and there is every reason to believe that there is, then all of that intelligence must be innate in each creation of that intelligence. This universal mind, or this, whatever you want to call it, divine mind, the great Tao. I wrote a book 8 years ago called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, which was based on the ancient teachings of the Tao Te Ching by a man named Lao Tzu, who wrote it 2,500 years ago, 500 years before the birth of Christ. And in that great tome, some call it the wisest book ever written. It's 81 verses, and I decided to write an essay on each of those 81 verses and how to apply it in today's life. He said, the great Tao, God, soul, this matrix behind all of life, he said, it does nothing, and yet it leaves nothing undone. He said, each and every one of you are doing nothing. You're all just being done. There is something moving the checkers around in this checkerboard that we call our life, that Arthur Miller was referring to when he said, I don't know, but I probably am. And that I said, when I said to my children, I'm through writing books, not only have I written an entirely new book, which was 144,000 words that I couldn't stop writing. I wrote it all by hand, every word of it. It's why I'm sitting on this chair, because my neck went crazy. Sitting there, hour after hour, writing about all the significant quantum moments that have appeared in my life that turned the direction of my life from where it was headed into a right turn and sometimes into an about face. And I call this book, I Can See Clearly Now. I can see clearly that the things that were taking place, when I really thought that I knew what I was doing, and something else was in charge of the whole process. One of the famous observations of one of our great humorists, Mark Twain, he said, the thing that gets you into trouble isn't what you don't know. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. And there's so much of what we know for sure that just ain't so. Just like what I knew for sure that I wasn't going to be writing. Not only have I written another entire book and looked at all of these significant factors and features that were really at play, moving me about, but I've written another book on top of that I'm about 3/4 of the way through, based upon how to apply the Bhagavad Gita, the great song of the Lord that Gandhi based his life on, and how we can apply it each and every day of our life.
I remember being in New York City and doing an interview not too long ago, and there was a radio station that had just changed formats. And they had gone from talk radio, which I had done many interviews at this station over the years, to gospel music. And so everybody that was on the staff at this radio station, some 30 people, were all told the day that I was coming there to do an interview that they had all been let go. And everybody was walking around, and they were all depressed, and they were all upset. And every time someone would come up to me and say, "Oh, Wayne, isn't this awful? I've been here for 22 years, and I just lost my job." And I would say, "Congratulations." And they look and say, "What's the matter with you? How could you believe in congratulations? I just lost my job." And I said, "Yes, but within a certain amount of time, probably within a year, you'll be in a place that is much better than where you are now." And it was almost like God was trying to tell you something, but you wouldn't listen. It's time to change. It's time to walk down another street. What is your dream? And you sit down with each one of these people and you ask them, what would you really like to be doing? Rather than working here this particular way. And then most of them said, I'd like to have my own business, or I would like to do some writing over here. I've always had some ideas about writing. One guy said that he wanted to just do an opera. He'd always wanted, and he's been working on an opera like Mr. Holland, remember, in Mr. Holland's Opus. But he could never get himself the courage to do it because he was always going into the radio station every day in New York. And then I saw him about a year and a half after that, and he was getting his opera published, which he couldn't have done if... It's like this intelligence that we think is conspiring against us is something that we have to understand works with us. But you have to have infinite patience and trust. And when you have... And the reason it says... infinite patience produces immediate results. The reason it says this is because the immediate result of your infinite patience is peace. You retreat in peace, and you let the universe handle the details.
Keep in mind that all of the seemingly impossible happenings that occur under the guise of what Carl Jung called synchronicity do so with a kind of ease and inexplicably bizarre twist of fate in which little or no effort is expended. This happens to us all quite frequently, particularly when we're more aligned with spirit than the material world. There seems to be what looks like a collaboration with destiny, and a magical connection takes place, making what was perceived to be hard rather easy. If the thought, "it's going to be difficult," might not be true, then something could very well occur to make it not be difficult, which means that the habituated meme is false. So now you have a choice with this excuse. A, you can believe a thought, "it's going to be difficult," that is very likely false and most assuredly preventing you from accomplishing what you want. Or B, you can believe an opposite thought, "it will be easy." That could also be false, yet still assist you in fulfilling your desires. When there's a choice, the notion that something is possible or easy is hands down more inviting than the one that insists it's impossible or difficult. So, which thought do you wish to hold? I recall the advice that I received concerning getting my first textbook published a year or so after completing my doctoral studies. This is what I kept hearing. "It's going to be hard. Getting published is impossible. You're unknown. Who would want to publish what you, a 30-year-old novice, has to say?" and the like. Yet I never bought into that logic. Consequently, I didn't adopt the "it's going to be difficult" excuse meme. I sent out 100 copies of my manuscript, and within a week I had 99 rejection letters. But I also had an offer from a small publisher in New Jersey. Essentially, what others thought of as a challenge didn't strike me as such. I knew instinctively that someone, somewhere, would be interested in what I had to say, and it all came about with relative ease. I also recall quite clearly my experience getting national publicity for Your Erroneous Zones, my first book written for the general public, in 1976. The experts all proclaimed that it was next to impossible to get booked on The Tonight Show, The Phil Donahue Show, The Today Show, and so on. This ready-made excuse would have been as good a reason as any to give up. As it turned out, Howard Papish, a talent coordinator on The Tonight Show, read Your Erroneous Zones on a flight from New York to Los Angeles. He called me to come out for a pre-interview, and I was booked on the program a week later. Over the next 3 years, I made 37 appearances on The Tonight Show, and I was a guest on virtually every other national talk show as well. It turns out that this first excuse didn't apply at all. It was actually quite easy to get national media coverage. I only had to answer the telephone. So once again, if the belief that it will be difficult isn't 100% true, why would you choose to support that notion?
Never once in 1976 did I say that getting on a national TV show would be hard. I trusted that the universe would provide experiences that matched my desires and that it would all work out for my highest good. The most important point is that by staying aligned with this thinking, I had no need to fall back on a tired, old, and untrue excuse.
There's perfect timing in the universe, and our arrival on Earth was a part of that synchronicity. In other words, we were an idea of God's whose time had come. This chapter introduces the concept of perfect timing and how to believe in it, notice it, tune into it, and apply it. Faith banishes all doubt. We know that ego has virtually no control over what happens to us. Our body grows, develops, changes, and declines independent of ego's desires or opinions. We know that eventually we'll shed this garment we've been wearing for a lifetime, not when our ego decides, but when that idea's time has come. You see, we must have faith in a universe that's created and guided by an intelligence greater than our ego, one where there can be no accidents. When an idea's time has come, it can't be stopped, but by raising our vibration to match that of the universal source of being, we can bring about that idea's time. We can raise our level of consciousness from ego and group dominance to what I call visionary consciousness, in which we reconnect to the mind of God. We banish all doubt by our knowing, which is a higher level of consciousness than believing. Our vision is God's vision in a manner of speaking. When we banish all doubt in favor of faith, there's nothing more powerful on this planet. You must believe, and then you'll see it unfolding right before your eyes. Co-creating with Spirit. Keep in mind that we can't co-create with anyone, including our spiritual source, unless we're in a place of harmony. To that end, we must suspend our false self, the ego, and stop all thoughts of resistance before we can participate in creating the inspired life we desire, in perfect symmetry with Spirit. Whatever we ask of our source in our prayerful communion will no longer be a wish or a hope. It will become a reality in our mind, just as it is in the mind of God. The how and when of its arrival, which have always troubled ego, are no longer issues. We maintain our optimism in thoughts such as, I desire it, it's in harmony with my source, or it's on its way, there's nothing to fuss about, and then we can relax and surrender to our knowing. Again, as Ernest Holmes reminds us, the thing we surrender to becomes our power. I know that the term surrender is generally associated with defeat, but there's no victor or victim when surrendering to God. This isn't about winning or losing. You see, what we're doing here is giving up our false self in favor of returning to our authentic self. And when we do, we'll meet our spiritual creator and become empowered to live in the same vibration with it. We'll become co-creators by surrendering and joining the all-knowing, all-creating force that allows everything to come into existence. Then our knowing replaces our doubts, and divine will prevails at all times. Only now, we're in harmony with that divine will. There's an old saying, fear knocked at the door, and faith answered, and no one was there. Fear stems from doubts we have about our divinity. The antidote to fear is faith. I know within that I am not alone, ever. I know that I have divine guidance available to me at all times. This inner knowing makes fear impossible. You too are not alone, and you also have omnipresent guidance accessible at will. When you truly know that the loving presence is always with you, the possibility of living with both doubt and fear evaporates. This is a belief that you can't get from another person. It has to have the quality of being a knowing. Then the notion of fear vanishes. When we're ready, willing, and open to it, the divine guidance we seek will spring into action on our behalf. It has been that way throughout our life. We're in a system that's directed by a supreme intelligence, and we're part of that system. Everything is on purpose. Our vibrational matchup determines what we attract and what we repel in our life. We needn't focus on what's already happened and what we've gone through. Rather, we must shift our vibration upward so that it harmonizes with spirit, and then and only then will spiritually based ideas come knocking on our door. These ideas won't give up or go away because, as we know, there's nothing in this universe more powerful than an idea whose time has come. Our responsibility is simply to become beings who expect and await inspired ideas that will not and cannot be stopped. Truly, there's absolutely nothing in this universe, including ourselves, that isn't perfectly timed. There are no wrongful deaths or mistakes. What shows up is ours, and it showed up precisely on schedule. I'd like you to think about the simple wisdom that the former slave and philosopher Epictetus imparted to us nearly 2,000 years ago. It is my business to manage carefully and dexterously whatever happens. Now there's a powerful idea whose time has come.